There we go. We're recording everybody.
Okay.
Anybody like some more?
Yeah, I talked to Vicky today. And I'm sorry about that. She was a better place, when she. Yes, because with the. But they same one. I don't think they get. I know, so they can find get other places. Well, they don't want the risk because of the. But in this, so they. And she.
All right, are we ready, everybody? Whatever we're gonna be doing? All right, let's see. Tonight, we are at the 10th of the 10 Commandments. Who's missing? Wife is missing. Here she comes. Why are you bringing all that? I think we have enough. Okay, no, we have enough.
But now I have enough.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Anticipating.
Well, I know. I think Javi's out of town, another one's out of town, whatever, but we have to go. So, all right, so let's take a look. 10th commandment. So let's go to page 413. Ronnie's out of commission this week. She's getting her eyes done.
Penny's reading, but still.
I'm supposed to strain them.
What?
No, I can read the big part.
You can read the big part. You want to try it? So page 413, we want verse 14.
You shall not covet your fellow's house. You shall not covet your fellow's wife, his manservant, his maidservant, his ox, his donkey, nor anything that belongs to your fellow.
Okay. In Hebrew, lo sachmod. That means not to covet. Thou shalt not covet. What does covet mean? Isn't that a funny word? You don't hear that word too often. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 18, page 971. Oh, look at that. I got it. 971. This is where the 10 commandments are repeated by Moshe to the generation that's about to enter the land of Israel 39 years, 40 years later. So we want verse 18.
They reversed house and wife on this.
Well, let's read it and we'll figure it out for ourselves. Let's see.
And you shall not covet your fellow's wife. You shall not desire your fellow's house, his field, his slave, his maidservant, his ox, his donkey, or anything that belongs to your fellow.
Very good. So Ronnie immediately notices that in Exodus, over here, I'm back on 413, it said you should not covet your fellow's house. First it mentions house, then it says do not covet your fellow's wife. Here in 971, it starts and says you should not covet your fellow's wife, then it goes to the house. That is an excellent point, and perhaps we will address that next week. Excellent point. But this week, we want to note something else. Here in Deuteronomy, it says we should not covet fellow's wife. And then it doesn't say you should not covet your fellow's house. It says you should not desire. In Hebrew, lo tis'aveh, not to have a ta'ava, a desire. So there's two things. There's not to covet, there's not to desire. What does that mean? Not to desire. What is covet? What is desire? So now before we go any further, Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch says, there are those who maintained and said, this Torah of yours, how do you know that it is truly authentic? How do you know it's authentic? How do you know it was God-given? Maybe this man, Moses, was brilliant, he was a genius, and maybe he created it. So there are many proofs that the Torah must be of divine origin. It could not have been created by a human being. One of the proofs is that when the laws of kashrus are presented, so it tells us that an animal that has, what are the two signs that an animal is kosher? It has what? Chews its cud, split hooves, right. An animal that has neither of these is not kosher. What about an animal that has one and not the other? Not kosher. Now, if you ask scientists to this day, they will tell you that there are only 4 such animals on the face of the earth that have one sign and not the other. Have one and not the other. For example, a camel chews its cud, does not have split hooves. A pig has split hooves. It does not chew its cud. And there are 2 more species of rabbit, hare, whatever they are. There are only 4 that are known to man to this very day. In Leviticus chapter 11, those 4 are enumerated. Torah says an animal is kosher if it chews its cud, has split hooves, and the following are not kosher. And it mentions the camel, the hare, the rabbit, and the pig. Those 4. How would a human being know or have the audacity to put into writing and spell out, these are the 4 that have one sign, not the other, not kosher? If you just leave it as a generalization, fine, but to specify, no human being on the face of the earth could know that. Moses lived in the Middle East. He didn't know what was going on in North America and in the Arctic or in Europe. He had no idea. And he made this statement. Only a creator of all that exists can make such a statement. Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch says, another proof that the Torah must be of divine origin is that no human being could or would present a biblical prohibition prohibiting human desire. Governments can tell us what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say. They might try to teach us what to think. They cannot control that. You can't control a person's desire. How can even such a mitzvah, how can such anything of that nature be even presented, as we'll examine when we come to the end? How can there even be a commandment? Don't desire your fellow man's house. We'll get there. Okay.
I'm curious that the word desire is used with the house instead of the wife.
Very good. Okay, excellent. That's also an excellent point. Although we'll see that these 2 mitzvahs apply, we'll see what they apply to. Okay? All right, so there's no question, Rabbi Samson Hirsch says, only God, creator of man, who can know that a human being is capable of disciplining themselves, as we will explain, could present such instruction that we should not desire. All right, so let's take a look. What does it mean to covet? So to covet means when we're dealing with somebody who really doesn't want to part with their possession, what they own. They don't want. They're not interested. But somebody sees it, and we say, you know what? I have to have that. I've got to have it. That's not coveting. That's not coveting. The person then says, I'm going to come up with a plan. If you ask the brother, you interested in selling? No, I'm not going to sell this. Okay. I'm going to come up with a plan. I'm going to scheme and plan how I'm going to manipulate circumstances so I can gain access to this. And the person then begins to pressure the individual. How? Have people talk to him, maybe say things, who knows what, come up with some stories or whatever it might be, this or that, even offer the individual a large amount of money. Say, listen, you need some cash. I know you need some cash. You can use some cash. This is worth $500. I'm going to give you $5,000 for this. I said, I don't want to sell it. How can you not sell it? What kind of a fool are you? Everybody's you're turning down $5,000. What's wrong with you? I'll make it $10,000. You know what people are going to say about you? What? There's something wrong. And the person submits because they are embarrassed or they were forced and they sell. That's coveting. Torah is telling us that you're allowed to go over here. I see what somebody has. Wow, I'd love to have that. What do you get it? Oh, this is one of a kind. Are you interested in selling? No, nothing wrong with that. Are you sure you're not interested in selling? I'll give you top dollar. No, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong. But when the person starts to scheme and plan and set into motion the act of pressure that causes a person to say, and I pay him for it, and I'll give him what he asks, that's covet. Now, I'm not talking about business people. You go, the old Jewish joke. You want to sell this? I wouldn't sell it for nothing in the world. Nothing. Don't bother me. I won't sell it for anything. I'll give you $10. Okay. All right. We're not talking about that. We don't need people. We're talking about this kind of what is theft? Theft is when we take something without consent and without paying for it. That's theft. Here, we took it with consent and we paid, but we coerced and forced the person to consent. That's coveting. Okay. What's wrong with coveting? So what's so terrible? You're paying the man for it. You're giving him top dollar. So what's wrong? Well, I schemed and I planned. So what? We all scheme and plan. What's so terrible? Torah is showing us that this is very dangerous. Such a person is an individual who does not respect someone else's property. This means a lot to this person. They don't want to part with it. And we should respect that. We made an effort. Okay. We lack a respect for another human being's property. And that's a very dangerous thing. Because if we lack respect for a person's property, we'll see what it can lead to. It can lead to lacking respect for another human being. It leads to deceit. Did I spell that right? It leads to deceit, okay? You become deceptive. Because when you start to plan and scheme, you might tell a person things and it might not be thoroughly truthful. We might be bending the truth a little bit. It leads to lashon hara, gossip, speaking badly about people and things. This guy had this type of a thing also, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to be associated. He might start saying things and telling things. Who knows what we're going to say? It can lead to a terrible quarrel. Person doesn't want to sell, and they're insisting and everything. Get people to talk. Ends up, it could be a fight. It could end up in theft. Won't sell it to me? I'll get it. You won't consent and you won't take my money? I'll get it without the money. It could lead to a person taking an oath falsely. Not only that, we can have a physical altercation, even murder. King Ahab wanted to purchase a vineyard, and the owner of the vineyard did not want to sell it. And he approached him once, twice, 3 times. Eventually, he concocted some type of a plan in which the owner of the vineyard was then accused of rebelling against the king, and he was put to death. And the king then had the right to confiscate the property because the person was put to death as rebelling against the king. He coveted, it led to murder. Notice, yes?
David and Bathsheba also, he was coveting. He sent him out to die to
Okay, hold on. He didn't send him out to die. He sent him out to
go to the front lines.
Right, to the front line. It wasn't guaranteed he was going to die. Okay. All right. You know what? It's the time to discuss it. We're not here to,
right?
Could be desiring. We'll see. Could be the desire. Okay, that might have been. I'm not saying it was an act of purity at all. There's much to question here. Okay. And we should learn from it. It's not correct. Notice that coveting leads a person to violating other parts of the 10 Commandments, swearing falsely, murder. Person can also, an individual who is driven by their desire to possess. These people are usually very miserly. When they have something, they don't want to give it away. So what's wrong? You buy something, people who hoard, they don't want to throw anything away. Just come to my house. Okay, everything you have. This is a memory, that's a memory. You don't want to throw anything away. Problem is, Person who's miserly, it's going to interfere with their performance of mitzvahs. We worked very hard, and then all of a sudden you have a yontif like Pesach comes around, and you go to the store to shop, and yeah, and all of a sudden you find that the fish which you were buying all year long for $10 is all of a sudden $20. You're buying something, whatever it might be. You're buying ketchup, which was $4, and now it's $10, $12. I mean, everything, the prices just are the soda. You want to buy kosher for Pesach, so everything, it's 2-3 times the price. It's expensive. A man wants to buy a pair of tefillin. You know what a pair of tefillin costs today? A regular simple pair of tefillin, at least $1,000. Wasn't like that. It was a time you get it for $250. That's a regular simple pair. You want to get something fancier? It could be $2, $3, $5,000. A mezuzah. How much did you pay for a mezuzah? Remember years ago? $30, $40. Now, $80, $100, $120.
It's more expensive.
Yeah, I'm talking about the exactly. Everything's going up. Person is going to be, if they're going to be miserly, they're going to cut back. They're not going to spend money appropriately for the mitzvahs, and especially for the mitzvah of charity. You find all types of reasons. I'm working so hard. You want me to give this guy money or whatever? Let him go out and break his neck and find a job or whatever. No, we don't know what the circumstances are with that person. We're not going to do the mitzvah. In addition, something else. Yes?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
My brain is moving.
Go ahead. I like that. I like moving brains.
I mean, we're supposed to believe also that Hashem gives each of us what we're supposed to have.
That's where we're going. Excellent. Very good. Your brain is moving very well. Okay? That's where we're going to go. All right. Another terrible, terrible danger is that a person who is very miserly, that they covet, they can't separate themselves from their monetary possessions. These people will dishonor their parents. As parents get older, they have needs, and sometimes the needs require the children to spend some money on their parents to help them, get them some assistance, whatever it might be. And they're not going to do it. Costs too much. Or if the parent needs help every day, well, you're fine once every 3 or 4 days. That's enough. And that is a terrible, terrible thing. As we will see, in addition to negating this, the 5th commandment, so they can negate the 5th, they can negate the 8th, they can negate the murder, which is the 7th, they can negate theft. Big trouble over here. All right, so those are the dangers of a person who covets. So now we have to ask ourselves a question. Coveting is an expression of envy, right? I'm envious what somebody else has. I'm jealous. It's not a very good trait, right? I think we all agree. Why would God create such a trait if it's something so abhorrent? Everything that God creates has an appropriate use, even anger. It's not good to get angry. We lose control. That's a terrible thing. It's good sometimes to show anger where we're still in control. Children need to see that what they're embarking upon is extremely unacceptable. Sometimes parents need to show anger, not to lose control. That's bad. Every single trait that Hashem has created has an appropriate place. What's appropriate about envy? To envy someone.
It could encourage you to try to do something better to better yourself. If you feel that this person has great knowledge, it could encourage you.
Okay, boy, you must have had a good dinner tonight. Excellent. We're good. That's terrific. So, if you notice, in the prohibition of coveting, so it mentions, yes, it mentions a wife, which we'll see in a moment, but it says a house, a servant, ox, donkey, anything that belongs to your fellow. We're talking about that the prohibition, I'm reading from 413. The prohibition refers, and again, we're not talking about a wife because nobody owns the wife. Wife, she might own her husband, but He doesn't know, that's for sure. I learned that very, very fast. I know who I work for. So, this prohibition of we should not covet refers to property which is owned. Someone owns property and they don't want to transfer the property. So we should not pressure them to do so because once they transfer it, it's lost. And on that, the Torah says, yeah, we put the person under pressure. Maybe we embarrassed him into selling. Yes, we paid him 10 times its value. But you know what? In his heart of hearts, he really feels bad about this. He really feels bad because once he has given up control, it's gone for him. What about something that a person can relinquish and yet still retains, such as knowledge? Is it appropriate to put pressure on someone to share their knowledge with you?
Probably not.
Or is it coveting? Would that come under the category of we should not covet? Thou shalt not covet.
No, because
They
it's
have
like a
secret.
flame. It's like a flame. The flame, you can light other things, but the flame doesn't diminish. The same thing with knowledge.
But if you have, say you've developed a secret technique or a new formula for something, and you have that knowledge, it is your intellectual.
That's your property, correct?
If someone tries to coerce you into giving them your formula, your, whatever your plan, whatever it is, because they want it.
Needs to patent it.
Right.
Well, but he will get there, but before he patents it, someone else.
So there is such a thing as intellectual property. You are correct. That's why I put a question mark here. That is a person's property, came up with an idea, and it's a wonderful idea, and you can make money off this idea. So for somebody else to pressure you into selling that, you would have lost control over that. But let's say it's not an intellectual property, it's not something that you're going to use for income, but it's knowledge that you have. Person says, listen, I'm not interested in sharing this. And you coerce them because you covet it and you're willing to pay for it. I'll pay you. I want you to teach me how to do this. Teach me fractions. Teach me trigonometry, which I used to know around 50 years, 50, maybe more, whatever. So knowledge is not something that once it's transferred, it's lost by the owner. And therefore, it is not included in the prohibition of thou shalt not covet. Now, if it's a property from which you can derive money, then it would be lost. But if it's not such a situation, just tell me, come on, you know the answer. Tell me, how did he do those tricks? How did the guy do it? Tell me, you know how. You don't want to share it. If I coerce it and pay you for it, even though you really wanted to be the only one who knew the answer, that would not be violating this. Similarly, what if I say to somebody, look, you know how to do this. You don't, this is not your business. If somebody knows how to, a chef, someone is a professional chef. You want to learn how to cook, you sign up for the class. If we're going to coerce, even by paying the individual to teach us, and he really doesn't want to, well, if it's going to interfere with his livelihood, that might be a problem. But what if it doesn't? What if it doesn't? Teach me the skill that you have. Because once you teach me, it does not diminish or cause you to lose control over the skill. You can do it, just that now I can also do it. Now you might say, well, wait a second, I want a contract that you're not going to compete with me or something. Fine. But teaching one a skill is not subject to this prohibition. So if we want to coerce somebody and pay them to teach us, it's not part of this. Yes.
I don't know about that because in the early days of the country, there was not the skill here to weave cloth. They had it in England, but not here. And England wouldn't share it, because that was an industry that, where they made money. So it turns out that one of the colonists disguised himself, went over there as a farmer, but then got into the mills and learned the technique and
Brought back the
brought
knowledge.
it back here. So they stole the skill.
Mhm.
Wouldn't that be coveting?
Because that was a business. That was a business, so to say, in
But
which
it was
again,
Skills.
it's like a property. Then it would be
Yeah.
considered like a property. But if someone, let's say, would teach it for money, but you know what, I have enough students in my class. And the person coerces them into accepting them, they did not violate this. Okay. What about someone who wishes, oh, I'm sorry, yes.
So regarding the skill and knowledge, I'm confused on one point. If you coerce somebody to do that, you're stealing their time, their energy.
But not their property.
But not their property.
But not their property. And coveting, we see, is limited to property, something that they owned. We don't own our time. Okay. All right. What about someone who wants to seek the hand of a woman in marriage? And he approaches her and she turns him down. And he doesn't want to give up. And he wants to get people to speak to her, and he's going to do this, and he's going to do that, and he's going to promise her this and promise her that, and he's going to give her lots of gifts and everything. Is that coveting? Would that be coveting? So the answer is no, because it's not coveting, because a woman is not anyone's property. And you might say, yeah, but once she gives a hand in marriage, that's lost, that's gone. But it's not property. Something else. As a matter of fact, if you notice in the verse, it says you should not covet your fellow's house. And then it says you should not covet your fellow's wife. It doesn't put them together. Why doesn't it say don't covet your fellow's house, wife, servant, ox, donkey? And especially in Deuteronomy, it begins, you should not covet your fellow man's wife, and you should not desire, like it's separate. Because marriage has nothing to do with any property. So that would not be subject. Seeking the courtship and the hand of a single woman in marriage, and we coerce her and do whatever we can to persuade her and pressure her into the marriage, would not be violating this. Not violent. Now, okay, so this is not violent, but still, God created envy. Why? It's got to be admirable at certain situations, or else why would God create this trait? The answer is, it is admirable. If we're indeed seeking knowledge, if indeed we see someone else, and that person, wow, I remember that person 5 years ago, and they were a nobody. And now look how they have elevated themselves spiritually. They become such a prominent person. Remember the community. I want to be like that. To use envy as a tool that we should ascend, that is admirable. That's why God created the element of envy. Similarly, if a person has many accomplishments, look what this person does. They're such an outstanding communal leader. And look at the people that they help and what they do. And that serves as a motivation for me. That coveting is good. That's good. That envy is good. That's a wonderful, that's why God created. Okay. So now let's talk about the fact that it does say, it speaks about property, and then it says that we should not covet your fellow's wife. There's a separate part, speaks about wife, speaks about property. Separate element for that. A wife is not property. So what does it mean we should not covet your fellow man's wife? What does that mean? He's not going to sell her. It means that a person should not, if man might see another man's wife and say, I've got to have her. I can't live without her. We know how many How many books have been written with this theme and everything? Well, just person is driven. So he's going to do everything he can to bring about a divorce, to cause this man to divorce him. He'll do anything, including hiring some women to try to seduce him and cause him to get in trouble and bring about an end to the marriage, whatever he can do. And he's doing this with selfish motivations. He's doing this, or he might say, you don't want to be, you think she's met. I'm telling you, she's not. She's got a history, whatever. And he'll hire some people and come, and they will validate, oh, she's got a history. And he thought he was married to the most wonderful woman, and now he's hearing other things. You know what? You could do better. Fine, divorce her, and then he's going to marry her. That is the biblical prohibition. Now, the man divorced her. He did so of his own free will. And now that she's divorced, she's single. He wants to marry her. But it came about by his coveting his fellow man's wife. It is biblically prohibited. One of the 10 commandments. It destroys the home. Another man's wife, sacred. Marriage is a kedushin. The word kiddush, kodesh, kedusha. It is sacred. And the woman is, when a man gets married and he's placing the ring on her finger, he says, Hare at mikudeshes li. Behold, you are sacred unto me. Meaning, your agreement to marry me makes you sacred. Sacred to who? Not just to me, to the whole world. You, a married woman is sacred. She's like a temple. She is like the holy, high holy priest, the Kohen Gadol, and her home is her temple. And someone comes, he's destroying the home, he's destroying the temple and everything in it, especially the impact on the children of the home. And then there's something else, and that is when a man is enticed by another man's wife and he can't stop thinking about her. What if he's married? These things happen. And so he doesn't mind. As far as he's concerned, his wife is gone and he's going to make room for her. But until that happens, he might still be with his wife. And while he is intimate with his wife, he's thinking about another woman. And that is a terrible circumstance. That is a terrible thing. That is prohibited, and it impacts and affects the soul of whatever child is formed from that union. And the child that is formed from that union will be created. This is a very remarkable statement, which the Kabbalists elaborate on. A person's thoughts during the moment of intimacy actually help shape the character of the child and the soul that is drawn into existence. And if the child is drawn into existence when the proper thoughts are not present, it can create character flaws that can remain, that can be very difficult to overcome. They can be overcome. Every human being can discipline, but it's not simple, which is probably one of the reasons there are so many crazy people running around the world today. This was Lavan's plan. Lavan wanted to destroy Yaakov and the Jewish people. Where do we see that? When Yaakov left and he went running after him, where do we see it?
He gave Leah that.
When Yaakov said, I'll work for you 7 years for your younger daughter, Rachel. Don't give me some other Rachel, your daughter. Don't change Leah's name to Rachel. I want your younger daughter, Rachel. He knew who he was talking to. And despite the fact that he went through to such extremes, Lavan presented Leah. Now, what did Lavan want? He could have said to Yaakov, look, I'll give you Rachel, but first I want you to marry Leah and work another 7 years. And then I'll give you Rachel. I'll give you Rachel right away. I'll give you Leah, then Rachel, which is exactly what happened. it's not just the work of Yaakov he wanted. He wanted Yaakov to be intimate with his bride, thinking that it's Rachel when it's Leah. And that will impact and be a blemish on the soul of whatever child is formed. That was Lavan's plan. So the plan was not fully successful, but to some degree it was. This is what the Torah is telling us. Another man's wife, sacred, sacred. But the question is, okay, so now we've discussed coveting. But we said that in Deuteronomy, in addition to covet, it says you should not desire. What does that mean? If coveting means that we should not scheme and plan and apply pressure and pay for this that we desire, then what does it mean don't desire? What is that? That is a separate biblical prohibition. And that is when a person sees something and they say, wow, that's great. You want to sell that? No, I'll give you top dollar. As a matter of fact, whatever you tell me, I'll give you 5 times the price. Will you think about it? No. Okay. Didn't do anything wrong. Nothing wrong. But when the person then resolves in their mind and they say, I've got to have that. I've got to have it. Can't stop thinking about it. I've got to have that. That moment that they resolve in their minds to acquire, that is the point of desire controlling them. That's the biblical prohibition. Thou shalt not desire. When desire is controlled. Well, how is that different than coveting? Coveting is when you act upon your desire. Because I have resolved to acquire it, therefore, I am going to apply pressure. And I'm going to have people speak. And I have a plan. And I'm scheming. That's coveting. But what if I don't plan and I don't scheme? But I have to have it. That's not coveting. That's desire. Every coveting includes the prohibition of desiring. You wouldn't get to coveting if you didn't desire. But not every desiring includes coveting.
See, but that's a really hard thing because desire, you're telling yourself you have to control your thoughts. You're not going to act on it, but
Right.
you have to control your thoughts.
And that's how do we do that?
That's really
What are we, machines? Okay, we're getting there. So now I ask you this question. What if a person desires something, they didn't act on it? Oh wow, that is so beautiful. That is so not fair. But you sure you don't want to sell it to me? It'll make my mother so happy. Can you please? You know what? Think about it. I'll come back tomorrow. What if a person is motivated to seek acquiring what they have not resolved to acquire? In other words, what that means is that I see something, I want it, but I haven't reached the point that I must have it. I have resolved that I must have it. I don't must have it. I would like to have it. And therefore, I'm approaching you a second time and a third time. But you turn me down, I'm going on with my life. Is that violating the biblical prohibition of we should not desire? It's not coveting, because I didn't plan a scheme or do anything, apply pressure. I want it. Well, you want, isn't that desire? But I haven't resolved. The desire has not moved me to resolve. What saith you in regard to this?
That's desire. So that's again, you need to control your thoughts.
But it's not against the 10th Amendment.
That's my question.
I don't think,
Why not?
because you haven't.
Ronnie is saying, why not? You're desiring it, which is motivating you to approach the person 2 or 3 times.
But you don't get it, you let it go.
You let
That
it go.
There's no result.
There's no resolve. So,
If you desire something, maybe it's in existence somewhere else, the exact same thing. So you could say, okay, let's go look and explore.
that's fine. I did look and explore. I even went on Amazon. Can't get it. They don't have it. It's one of a kind. Only Leicester has it, nobody else.
Now, if you were to
But-
say, to the person, say, if in the future you want to sell it, please,
That's fine.
that's,
Okay. In the future, if you want to sell it, but I'm not planning, I'm not plotting, I'm not acting on it, and I haven't resolved that I must have it. Until you decide, until you call me, I'm moving on with my life. So my mind is of the opinion that if you desire without any resolve, you are not violating this prohibition.
But it-
However, others, many others disagree. And they say that if a person, gosh, I really want that. I really want that. And I asked you once, twice, fine, that's it. I asked you a third time, I'm going back 3 times, that unto itself. You ask a person once or twice, you do what's normal. If you do a little bit beyond the normal, that's the violation. Even though you didn't resolve, you didn't come to what I must have it. So this question is a disagreement in halacha. In halacha.
So then,
But it says low teeth aven, you should not desire your fellow's house. It's using desire over there.
Correct. And how do we define desire? Maimonides says desire is defined by reaching a point in which you resolve to a point. If you didn't reach that point, I must have it. That's not the desire. Others say yes. This is the question. I'll let you argue about it. Go ahead.
So- Desire is, there's different parts, so like you could desire something, be jealous or envious of someone. But not try to acquire it, you could acquire something similar, maybe your neighbor gets a car that you love, you could get a car like that.
Right.
But, so it's not, is desire a problem when you're envious or jealous, or it's when you go to that next step and asking for it?
You go to the next step.
Okay,
And not just asking, but resolving, I've got to have what that person has because I can't get anything like it.
but having thoughts of just wishing you had the same thing that someone.
Nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
Yes,
Just to be clear, so when you covet or desire, it always has to be against another person that will lead to.
it has to be in reference to something that someone else possesses or a wife. So another man's wife.
Yeah, Ronnie and Michelle and I are all in Rabbi Nidekman's Pirkei Avos class, and we know that we're not supposed to want beyond what we have.
Let's see. So let's take a look. We're going there. That's where we're going now. Okay. So let's take a look now and say, by the way, how do we know? I said, if somebody wishes to pursue a single woman, she's turned him down a dozen times. He's not giving up. And he's getting people to speak on his behalf. And he sends her roses and candy and you name it, roses and lollipops. Wasn't that the song? Roses. What's it? What? Okay. He does everything he can to ingratiate himself. And we said, that's fine. How can we prove that? How can we prove that that's not, there's no prohibition about, oh, you desire, you resolved in your mind, you're going to marry this girl?
He's
You
not
reason-
taking her away from somebody else. He's not breaking up a house.
Because the Torah says you should not covet or desire your fellow man's wife, a married woman, which suggests that a woman is not married and you resolve, I'm going to marry her. That's okay. You can't hit her over the head with a club and drag her by her hair. You can't do that. No.
I follow talking.
Stalking is no good. No, stalking is no. All right. Okay, so now this is the problem that we have. So the Torah is telling us, you should not covet. Okay, I shouldn't act, scheme, and plot or whatever. I'm consumed and controlled by that which I desire. All right, we all understand that's bad. But then the Torah says in Deuteronomy, we shouldn't desire. Desire is a feeling. Like Rabbi Hirsch said, only God could give a commandment. No human being can say, you should not feel this way. How can you command a person how to feel? What food do you absolutely despise makes you nauseous? Let's take broccoli. Okay? A lot of people like broccoli. Okay,
It's a bad
broccoli.
rat.
A lot of people like broccoli. Okay, and let's say a person I can't tolerate broccoli. Could there be a mitzvah in the Torah and say, "Thou shalt eat broccoli"? Yeah, I hate broccoli, but if I have to eat it, I'll eat it. But what can there be a mitzvah in the Torah? Thou shalt love the broccoli that you eat. I'll eat it, but I can't. I don't love it. It makes me sick. What should I do? How could there be a mitzvah on what to feel? How could there possibly be a mitzvah that says, don't desire what that person has? I mean, that's part of life. You see something, you want it. That's what motivates us to work harder, to get a better job, to earn more money, so we can have some comfort in life. Is there something wrong with having some comfort? Should we not have a car and we should walk? What's wrong with that? We need it. These are necessities. How could there be such a prohibition? So let's go to page 413. I see in the footnotes that he quotes from the Ibn Ezra. Actually, it begins on 412. 412 in the bottom. I'm not going to have, that's,
And put in prohibition against coveting.
maybe I'll let Michelle, you want to read that nice and loud? You see it on the bottom of 412, the 10th commandment. Okay?
The Torah forbids something as normal as jealousy and being desirous of someone else's possessions. Does this not fly in the face of human nature? Ibn Ezra explains this with a profound psychological insight. It is quite expected that an ignorant, poverty-stricken peasant might covet his neighbor's daughter, but it would never dawn on him to lust after the queen. She is so lofty and inaccessible that such a thought would never enter his mind. The point is that sensible, logical people long to acquire only things that are within their frame of reference, but not things that are beyond the scope of their imagination. Similarly, if someone had complete faith in God, he would recognize that property that God wanted his neighbor to have is as inaccessible to him as the queen to a poor peasant. If so, it would never dawn on a person to covet his neighbor's belongings. Seen in this light, one who covets what is not his demonstrates a lack of faith in God. It is surely the proper province of the Torah to command that one develops such absolute faith.
So it's not just the Torah saying, don't have the feeling, but rather the Torah is saying, let's reflect on what we have. We see something, I'd like to have a car like that, fine. I'll work harder and I'll go get it. There is no other car like that. I've got to have his car. That's a flaw in my character. And what is the flaw? That I have a lack of faith that my Creator is providing for me what I need, and that which I don't need and might be detrimental, he's keeping away. So this mitzvah, this commandment is really an expression of faith and trust. In Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 4, paragraph 1, says, Ezehu Asher, who is rich?
It's a man with hope.
He who is happy with his life. That's wealth. Because if we're not happy with what we have, which is what God's given us, now that doesn't mean that we shouldn't work and strive to have more, that's fine. But to become consumed, and we have to live in where we have to work 10, 12 hours a day, and we don't have a life, because this way I can have this, and I can pretend that I'm something I'm not. We've lost ourselves. We're lost. We have no purpose. We need to understand, why am I here? What is it all? I need to be home. I need to be with my family, my wife, my husband, whatever. That's my goal, my relationship with my Creator. If a person is happy, whatever we have, gee, I'd like to have that, but I don't. Then I have to say, you know what? I don't need it. Because Hashem, God, provides everything I need. And if I don't have this, God is telling me this can be harmful. How many people have won the lottery only to have their lives ruined? Sometimes, right? Sometimes this is not, oh, if only I was famous. Oh, wow, if only our parents were billionaires and we had trust funds and whatever it is. And unfortunately, a lot of these children who are raised in that atmosphere, they're lost. They become totally lost. Let's go to page 1282. 1282. This is also very small, so maybe we'll have Michelle read this. This is from Ecclesiastes. Who wrote Ecclesiastes?
Psalm.
Who's the author of Ecclesiastes? King Solomon. So he knows what he's talking about. The greater, the most wise individual. Page 1282. This is chapter 5. We want to begin with verse 9 through 19. Let's wait a second. Everybody get there. 1282. Do we have it? All right. Chapter 5, we begin with verse 9.
A lover of money will never be satisfied with money. A lover of abundance has no, this too is futility.
All right. He goes through Ecclesiastes speaking about various things that he's seen in his life which are futile that people are pursuing. This is a very famous verse. Ohev kesef la yispa kesef. One who loves money will never be satisfied. Why is that? You'll never have enough. No matter what you have, you want more. Go ahead, please.
As goods increase, so do those who consume them. What advantage then has the owner except what his eyes see? Sweet is the sleep of the laborer, whether he eats little or much. The satiety of the rich does not let him sleep.
Interesting thing. There's expression. The more you have, the more you worry. Lack of sleep. Was that part of your? No, that wasn't in the course. Okay. Person doesn't have a lot, then he has something to eat or whatever. He sleeps well. Doesn't have to worry. Okay, go ahead, please.
There is a sickening evil which I have seen under the sun, riches hoarded by their owner to his misfortune, and he loses those riches in some bad venture. If he begets a son, he has nothing in hand. As he emerged from his mother's womb, naked will he return. As he had come, he can salvage nothing from his labor to take with him.
This is the source of the phrase in which we say, you can't take it with you, right?
This too is a sickening evil. Exactly as he came, he must depart. And what did he gain by toiling for the wind? Indeed, all his life he eats in darkness. He is greatly grieved and has illness and anger. So what I've seen to be good is that it is suitable to eat and drink and enjoy pleasure with all one's labor, that he toils beneath the sun during the brief span of his life that God has given him. For that is his lot.
What God has given a person, enjoy. It's not, the Torah is not saying that we have to have a life of denial. Enjoy what God has given us. If he hasn't been giving it to us, don't let the passions control us.
Furthermore, every man to whom God has given riches and possessions and has given him the power to enjoy them, possess his share and be happy in his work. This is the gift of God. For he shall remember that the days of his life are not many, while God provides him with the joy of his heart.
Person should not be consumed and obsessed with what we don't have, but rather we should appreciate what we do. Some people would have to convey that simple message. Unfortunately, it falls on deaf ears. So now we have a question. The question is that we have once a month in our services what's called Rosh Chodesh Benching. This Shabbos, the Shabbos that precedes the new moon, we have a prayer that we all say, asking God that the new month should be filled with the following. And listen to what it says. If I can find it, it's very helpful. Here we go. May it be your will, Hashem, our God, God of our forefathers, that you inaugurate this month upon us to be for goodness, blessing. You should give us long life, a life of peace, a life of goodness, a life of blessing, a life of sustenance, a life of physical health, a life in which there's fear of heaven, awe of sin, a life in which there is no shame or humiliation, a life of wealth, and a life of honor. We're asking God for wealth and honor. Why are we asking for wealth and honor? If God wants us to have it, we'll have it. If he doesn't want us to have it, it means we don't need it. We're asking God for wealth and honor. I understand we want peace. We want long life, sustenance, blessing. What is this? So, sages, one of my teachers, Rabbi says, context. Look at the context. It says, we ask God for all these blessings, physical health, a life in which there is awe of heaven and fear of sin, no shame and humiliation, a life of wealth and honor, a life in which we have love for your Torah. It's okay to have wealth and honor if it is preceded by an awe of heaven, of God, a fear of sin, and followed by a love of God's Torah. Then, having wealth and honor, what's wrong with wealth and honor? King Solomon was wealthy, Rabbi Yehuda Nossi was fabulously wealthy, but they used their wealth appropriately. They did not use their wealth. There were many sages who were very, very wealthy. They did not use their wealth for the pursuit of pleasures. They used their wealth to help others, to build communities, to perform acts of charity. We need wealth, maybe to ingratiate themselves amongst the higher class of the oppressive government who was there, and this way they had access to them. Wealth unto itself is not a sin. Honor is not a sin. Depends how we use it. It's a tool. But King Solomon, through the book of Ecclesiastes, which is really worth reading, so comforting, is that we begin to realize that all of human possessions are like a child's toy. Little children play with the what do they call those little cars? Matchbox cars. And big children play with Porsche and others, and those are the same toy. It's just it's more expensive a little more. It's nothing of any inherent value. If we use it as tools, how can we use it as a tool? When we understand that we have faith and trust, and our happiness is not determined by this. How do we do that? Love of Torah, on heaven and sin. This is the final of the 10 commandments. Actually, it's like the exclamation point, because this is really a commandment which is giving us a perspective. This is the perspective which sums up and enables us to address all 10 commandments. That's why this is it, the closing argument, the closing statement. This is what it's all about. After all is said and done, you know what we can take with us? This is what we can take. Awe of heaven, fear of sin, love of Torah. Our Torah, our mitzvahs, our good deeds, whatever they may be, charity, kindness, whatever it is, we take that with us. The rest, futility, as King Solomon says. Okay, we'll stop here. Thank you. I appreciate you coming. Next week, I think we're going to meet one more time, I think, and that'll be next week, God willing. And there's more to do with the 10 Commandments. And we'll try to finish it next week, and then we'll be on summer break, okay? Yes, ma'am.
When was the Torah, 5 books of Moses, written for the first time? When Moses came down with the 2 tablets and the verbal explanations, at what When was it written down?
So it was written as they went, as they journeyed. It was written. So it wasn't concluded until the conclusion. So the famous question is, who wrote the last 8 verses? Because 8 verses prior to the conclusion, it says Moshe died. So who wrote it? So that is a discussion of the Talmud, and
Was it
maybe
Joshua?
some say it was Joshua. Others say, how could it be Joshua? God gave the whole Torah to Moshe, and Moshe gave it to us. Nothing was left out. What does this mean? Talmud answers, yes, it was written by Moshe, but he wrote it with a tear.
Like he wrote it in advance.
But what does that mean? He wrote it with a tear. What does that mean? So
You-
maybe we'll talk about it next week. Okay?
Okay.
Appreciate you all coming. Thank you. Thank you all Zoomers, whoever you may be.